Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. So here I want to cover Assassin versus Whisperknife on the Rogue class. These are the two Paragon paths you can use. One that is very heavily on melee, stab your target. The other one has a bit more flexibility. You can play at a little bit of a distance. So let's cover all my test results and my experience thus far with both Paragon paths. Assassin used to be the most reliable and we'd play it for the longest time, but the Whisperknife just had a lot of updates, making it very viable. So we shall cover what's the benefits of either or and ultimately which one you should use for the most damage in multi-target and single target. I'll put timestamps on the play bar below, and let's first of all go to multi-target. And well, there's not really a contest here. Whisperknife is going to win every time in multi-target, mainly because it has the ability of shadowy opportunity plus your advantageous position. This feature allowing you to gain combat advantage against all your targets regardless of positioning is just massive. You can gain up to 90% extra damage with that versus what the Assassin can have. It still has stealth, but it doesn't have the ability to retain combat advantage against the targets after leaving it unless you use a daily power. So Whisperknife's kit is just really powerful in multi-target and there's no real contest. Whisperknife gonna win every time with a setup something like this. You have your smoke bomb, blade flurry and path of blades, and your at wills you can generally just go with Cloud of Steel because Shuriken Toss unfortunately doesn't trigger shadowy opportunity on its ricochets, and Cloud of Steel can just be a little bit faster cast time. It's just insane the amount of damage you can output. You can check any of the gameplays even after they've gone and reduced the effectiveness of shadowy opportunity down to 150 magnitude, which will be a change coming most likely next week. Right now it's on 250 magnitude and it's just even crazy busted, and yeah, there's no question at all. A setup like this versus Assassin is gonna win every time. Believe me, nothing can survive your onslaught. You get stealth back so quick using stealth blade flurry, then your encounter, and everything's just melted. Go to the next group, stealth, blade flurry, and then one of the other two encounter powers, and they're all gone. With the new stealth changes, you get stealth back even faster, and you'll be able to kill stuff even quicker by using more blade flurries and getting cooldown quicker on all your abilities. This build works really well in single target as well. I would, if you're just questing, use one with the shadows instead of Return to the Shadows because you generally aren't fighting that many enemies, and this is particularly good when you have like 10 enemies. This is good if you just have a few and you gain a damage buff. But let's move over to single target damage. Different setups you can use on the different Paragon paths and my test results on them. Just in terms of raw DPS, we could move to Assassin and choose a setup just like this. At wills, Duelist Flurry, maintain those bleed stacks at 10. You want to cast this every 9 seconds to refresh that. And then it's just Gloaming Cut for the damage and the stealth regen. And counter powers. You want to be using Smoke Bomb, combining that with Toxic Blades. I know, you may question what's up with that, and well, there's a bit of a bug. You can get Toxic Blades up to 11 stacks with Smoke Bomb, basically making Toxic Blades tick for 220 magnitude damage, versus normally it should only be on 100. We shall see how long that bug remains, but I think it should probably stay. It's actually pretty unique, but does mean you're ditching Lashing Blade in this setup. You're using Wicked Reminder for the debuff effect there. You can also use it from stealth to even increase your damage further, and then you have Assassinate. For the daily powers, of course, Shocking Execution, and for the class features you will want to have Invisible Infiltrator for an artifact call instead of Tenacious Concealment, which you can use in between an artifact call. The reason you would use it is for an extra stealth regen, so you could get Cunning Ambusher more often. Now, with this setup here, it doesn't actually matter where you use the stealth. If you're positioning behind your target, Assassinate will get the 25% damage anyway. The best bet would be to go with Wicked Reminder, but since Wicked Reminder has like a 15-16 second cooldown, you can use Stealth again in between having cast it. So while it's on cooldown, use the Stealth you get back, again, just with Duelist Flurry or with your Assassinate or even with your Smoke Bomb, depending on the timing, and then make sure you have the Stealth back for Wicked Reminder. And that's really it. And ultimately, I found this to be the best setup for single target damage, and that's backed up by this table right here. Now, in terms of this test, it's in the training room here, and yes, I'm getting attacked and I'm not behind the boss. So that's why I'm using Stealth with Assassinate as best I can, and then using Wicked Reminder. Usually with Stealth, you'll end up with them being like offset like that you can. And yeah, otherwise you're maintaining bleeds with Duelist, getting that on 10 stacks, and then it's gloaming cuts in between. And we end up with, yeah, Assassin coming out on top with that combination. You want to see the data with that? Well, here is the combat log. Without Smoke Bomb, Toxic Blades will not deal this much damage at all. It'll deal about 30,000 DPS. Again, you want to balance Gloaming Cut and Duelist Flurry. I could have balanced it a little bit better, I think, and got a bit more Gloaming Cuts, as I probably used a bit more Duelist Flurries than I needed to. You're kind of losing damage in that way. And I decided to slot in Execution to compare against like the other feat, and ultimately there's really no difference between the two, so just go with Shadow's Flurry. It can help you maintain the bleed stacks a little bit easier. Now, in terms of this chart, we have Whisperknife, and the setup I'm using there is this one, and you're basically using Stealth with Blade Flurry, and then using Smoke Bomb and your Path of Blades. Now, your rotation is going to go something like this. You Blade Flurry from Stealth, and then you use Smoke Bomb and Path of Blades, and then some Cloud of Steels. As soon as you Stealth again, Blade Flurry from Stealth. You can use a Disheartening Strike every 10 seconds. You can use it at the time when your Shadow Opportunity has just expired. This is pretty much the rotation. You just keep doing that. As soon as you get the Stealth, you're using your Blade Flurry with that Stealth, and then you're using your Smoke Bomb, Path of Blades, and then more Cloud of Steels, Blade Flurry from Stealth, and then you can use a Disheartening Strike here, and then you get your Stealth back, Blade Flurry from Stealth, Smoke Bomb, Path of Blades, and that's it. Blade Flurry from Stealth again, and that rotation can net you quite a lot of damage. And the advantage with it is it's all multi-target damage as well, but it's better than any of the single target damage powers you could use. We're going to talk about Shadow of Demise in just a sec, but you can see it does rank lower. This setup, very close to Assassin, and I kind of prefer it because it has that flexibility of not having to be right on top of your enemy. Like, this is a melee enemy, it's going to hit me if I'm right next to him, so I can be advantaged by just sitting a little bit further away. I'm within the range of my Blade Flurry, he's within the range of my Smoke Bomb and Path of Blades. I have that distance. Like, the maximum distance I could be far away, this is 20 feet radius, this is 30 foot radius, and this is actually 25 feet radius. So the closest I would have to be to my target is 20 feet for it to still get hit by a Smoke Bomb. So you can play a bit of a distance. You don't have to be right in their face. With Dagger Threat, you'll want to be up close at 20 feet. That's still not right on top of the enemy. So you can avoid certain mechanics, and it's just easier to play. But again, I think the maximum damage output you're going to be able to get is still on Assassin. Now, not by a lot though. And Whisperknife is easier to play because you don't have to worry about Duelist Flurry and Gloaming Cut and getting the rotation down on that. If you don't keep up your bleed stacks, you're losing out on a lot of damage. If you're not using enough Gloaming Cuts, you're also losing out on a lot of damage. And this damage here is going from the target at full HP to no HP, so it gains the full benefit of the scaling with Gloaming Cut. The lower your target's hit points, the more damage it deals. It takes me 5 minutes to kill the dummy, and we end up with like that DPS. But The data for Whisperknife here is this. You got the shadowy opportunity, massive amounts of damage because you're using all the abilities you can to basically get the most amount of damage out of it. Yeah, like 43%. A bit crazy. And this is even after the nerfed version. This version been changed down to 150 magnitude versus before it was at like 250 magnitude. You'll have that on the live server still, and that change will be getting implemented soon, but it doesn't mean Whisperknife will be bad. It'll still be very good and competitive with Assassin here. But you will want to use this setup and use that correct rotation. The other ones like Assassin with Wicked Reminder, Stealth, Lashing Blade, and Assassinate just fell behind in damage. You can see my log, and that was it right here. I had to go and do some math to adjust the damage with Assassinate. It would be a bit higher if we can actually cast it from behind our target, because we're using our stealth with Lashing Blade, so that loses a bit of damage. But if it had that extra damage buff, we'd be at that 524,000 DPS, which is still behind those other methods of gaining damage. And in the last spot there is like the Shadow Demise with Whisperknife, and that data is right here. You're using your Lashing Blade, Shadow Strike, and Impact Shot just to get those extra damage in, and then you're getting the Shadow Demise 5 seconds later. You're using a setup something like this with that Shadow of Demise there. You've got your Impact Shot, Shadow Strike, and also your Lashing Blade, and you're going to go into Stealth, use that Shadow Strike, then Lashing Blade, then Impact Shot, and then Cloud of Steel until your Shadow Demise hits, and then you use your At Will, Disheartening Strike, Cloud of Steels, and then when your cooldowns are still on 2 seconds left, that's when you go into Stealth again and you'll cut those cooldowns. And you should be able to get your Shadow of Demise to hit upwards of like 1.6 million here on this build. And the builds we're using are all identical. We have those 90% in all of our stats, and then we're at about 92,000 item level, just under. And that's the same with all of those builds I used to get this data. So yeah, they're pretty balanced in terms of single target damage for Whisperknife and Assassin. You can use either, it's very viable. But if there's any adds whatsoever, any extra enemies than the single boss, you're always better off going Whisperknife over Assassin. Just because you're using multi-target powers in a single target scenario and still getting an absolute ton of damage. Again, very close behind Assassin, just with the massive benefit of multi-target. So Whisperknife, yeah, there's no question. You got to use this one in the Moon Dancer trial. You got to use it in like Master Temple of the Spider first boss and any other boss in any other content that has like ads spawning in where you need to kill groups of enemies. Always Whisperknife is going to be best at killing multiple enemies. Assassin, ever so slightly better when there's only one target there. On a last note, however, all of these tests don't include artifact calls and the burst damage you could get from them. That's very hard to test. It can be very inconsistent on your daily power, whether it crits or deflects. Same with the mount power. Now, the advantage on Whisperknife, you can use the Shadow of Demise build, and you could feed into Shadow of Demise your daily power and your mount power, and then get a bunch of extra damage during the artifact call. But on Assassin, you can similarly use a harder hitting daily power. You can use a feature to combine with that to get some extra damage buffs to increase your mount power further as well than you could on, let's say, Whisperknife. Ultimately, you'll have to test out that for yourself, but I'm covering the DPS, damage over time, and in general, what you'll be looking at in the comparisons when you have damage overall. Especially if you're not a player who's focusing on artifact calls all the time, if you're just running pug content. So hopefully this clears some things up for you guys. Just be aware that everything's still in development. It always is. They like to change whenever they feel like it, and I'm not sure they're done yet. They are making another pass on Whisperknife they already did on the preview server. The changes are here, the reduction to your shadowy opportunity, but these tests are with that. They are with those changes, and this is how it would stand. And right now on the live server, yeah, Whisperknife is way above this because shadowy opportunity is even more powerful. It's up there 250 magnitude instead of 150. But it does struggle from stealth drain, which will get fixed again when this update comes live. Hopefully, again, this is somewhat insightful. A massive thank you to all of these channel members for their added support. We'll see you guys around. Goodbye for now.